This NFL season has been full of plenty of eye-catching headlines and intriguing subplots to keep us all invested on what's happening on the gridiron. On Monday, I engaged in some NFL chalk talk with my good friend Kelly Patrick of 1450 WXVW, the Sports Buzz, out of Louisville, Kentucky, as he gets you up to date on everything you need to know as we head down the home stretch of this NFL season. So first of all, Kelly, we want to wish you a good afternoon and thank you for joining us on the Two-Man Advantage Podcast, and we're excited to talk some football with you this afternoon.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So, Kelly, when we look at what's happening around the league, obviously earlier this weekend, Colin Kaepernick was put on injured reserve because of a torn labrum in his shoulder. And certainly the 49ers owe him about $12 million come April if he's still on the roster. So do you think he's played his last down of football for the 49ers?
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a question about that. I think he's done with the 49ers. The question becomes what team across the league will want to take on the salary cap hit that would be Colin Kaepernick, and who thinks he can help their team. A couple of the potential landing places that I've heard rumblings of is possibly Denver, if Peyton Manning doesn't work out there after this year, possibly Philadelphia. Now, is there much legitimacy to those rumors? I don't know. It's completely conjecture at this point, but we'll have to wait and see. I think he's got plenty of football left in him, and in the right situation, I certainly think he can lead a team into the playoffs and make a playoff run. He's already shown he can do that. He's not past his prime. I think it's just a matter of finding the right fit for Colin.
Now, when we look at also another similar quarterback to Colin, you look at Cam Newton and what he's done in Carolina. He's got them at one of the best records in the league, but he's certainly taken some criticism with it on the field antics and the way he conducts himself in the media. What do you think the criticism towards Cam is unwarranted, considering the fact what the Panthers' record is, or no?
I think a lot of the focus is being paid toward Cam and his antics, his dancing, his dabbing, and I think he brings a lot of that on himself. However, if history is any indicator, he's going to continue to excel. I mean, he had some issues at Florida before going to a junior college, and sure enough, he went to Auburn, won a national championship and the Heisman Trophy before being the number one overall pick, offensive rookie of the year in the NFC, and now he's got, he's tied with Tom Brady with 26 touchdowns as of right now. And, 20 of them being passing, 6 of them being running. But I think the criticism, if Cam really didn't want these criticisms, he would just try to handle himself like Mr. Modesty. So I don't think he minds them. I think he brings them on himself. I don't have a problem with them at all. I think the people who get all uptight about him need to reevaluate what's important to them, because he's not doing anything that's really hurtful. He's doing a little dance, having fun. And I personally don't see anything wrong with it. It'll be very interesting to see how far he can take these Panthers this year with the depleted wide receiver core they have and just the overall landscape of the league this year.
Now, I know that you're in the region in the country that allows you to see a lot of Cincinnati Bengals football. Obviously, around that part of the country, Andy Dalton is a polarizing figure. When we looked at the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously they lost last night, but they still have the second best record in the AFC as a conference. So can you tell me, do you think Andy Dalton can lead the Bengals to the playoffs and or lead them to a playoff win, and whether you think Marvin Lewis can get the Bengals to a prolonged playoff run?
Yeah, I certainly don't think that there's any question about it. It can happen. Andy Dalton's a talented quarterback. He struggles in the spotlight anytime there's a primetime game. He's shown basically that he and his team drops the ball and they don't win. Does that mean that he won't be able to? No, I don't think so. I think John Elway and other quarterbacks throughout history had similar reputations before they actually surpassed that reputation and they put it in their past. So I think it could happen. I think the Bengals have a lot of good things happening for them right now if you're looking at it from a distance. And I am a lifelong Bengals fan. If I'm taking my Bengals fan sunglasses off, I think they still have a lot of real good things happening for them. When they get Adam Pac-Man Jones, or as he likes to be called, Adam Jones, off of the injured list, and they get some of the guys on defense healthy, I think they can make a run for it. And I expect them to have their first victory in the playoffs this year. I think continuity has a lot to do with that. I think you put yourself in the playoffs enough, eventually you're going to win.
Could you just give me a thumbnail on your thoughts on what J.J. Watt of the Texans had to say about Andy Dalton after the Texans' Monday night victory in Cincinnati?
Yeah, he made a Red Rifle reference, being that it's in the holiday season. He was trying to be funny, and it was clearly a scripted joke, a scripted attempt at humor. I don't have a problem with it. The fact that Andy Dalton was so offended by it surprised me. And I think he needs to, once again, similar to the Cam Newton situation, kind of just lighten up, learn to take a joke. I mean, that wasn't even a very offensive joke. If he had said something about his family or anything like that, I'd imagine that's not the first time someone's poked fun at Andy Dalton for having red hair, right? I mean, he's got to have thicker skin than that. So come on, Andy, lighten up a little bit.
Now, when we look at what's happening in our region of the country, obviously the Detroit Lions have not gotten off to the start or the season that they had anticipated. And certainly for us, Matthew Stafford is a hot topic of conversation. So I'm just wondering your perspective on what went wrong for the Lions and whether you think, what major changes may be coming for the Lions this offseason.
Great question. We're only a couple years removed from the Lions going 11-5 in 2014. That got a lot of the Ford Field hopefuls and supporters excited about the future. They brought in guys like Reggie Bush, and they had Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley and all. What seemed to be on paper, Calvin Johnson, what seemed to be on paper as a very legitimate formula for winning. I thought, at least. I mean, they still got Larry Warford out of Kentucky, the offensive guard. They've got some good pieces there. I don't know why it's not working. I think that obviously earlier this month they let go their president and general manager, and Jim Caldwell is probably a dead man walking when it comes to his job. I don't know exactly what the solution is. I think that the number one casualty is probably going to be Jim Caldwell. They'll probably get rid of Megatron. I don't know if they'll keep a hold of Stafford. He's owed a lot of money, but it'll be very interesting. I'm a Bengals fan, as I said, and I've been a Bengal. I'm 32 years old. I've been a Bengals fan my entire life. I think there's nothing that can be. You can't say enough about continuity within an organization. So the fewer times that you can just completely start from scratch, the better. What's gone wrong for Detroit? I think, don't they have Halati Nada? They tried to fill some holes when they lost both Fairley and Ndamukong Suh, and they tried to change their formula up. That formula was starting from the inside on the defensive interior and working your way out. They don't have the best depth at cornerback. I don't know exactly. It's difficult in the NFL when you have, 11, 22, 33 moving parts on a team to pinpoint exactly where things are going wrong. But clearly it's not working. And earlier this month, they let go their president and general manager. I think they've got some good pieces in possibly Matthew Stafford. Obviously, Calvin Johnson's extremely talented. They need to make some decisions in the offseason. Do they want to keep Stafford? Do they want to start from scratch entirely? I mentioned before that I'm a Bengals fan, and I know better than anyone, or as well as anyone, that continuity within an organization, it really helps. If you look at the Steelers or any of those great teams, those great organizations that continually put out winners, what do they have? They have continuity. And I think the Bengals finally have that, and we're at least seeing some success, some prolonged whatever you want to call it. They're not winning any Super Bowls. But if you want to see success, you have to have continuity. So my advice to the Lions, and I think what they will do, what the Ford family will do, is they'll try to find the right people to put in place and hold on to them. And 5 years from now, they'll still have the same head coach. I think Jim Caldwell is a great coach. I think he's very well respected across the league. And if they want to hold on to him, I think that would be a good move. I don't know. Unfortunately for him, I don't think it'll happen. But they've got a lot of decisions on their hands this offseason.
Hopefully, their next general manager works out a little bit better than Matt Millen right now.
Oh my goodness, yeah. They don't need. You don't need 5 first-round wide receivers or however many he took.
That's still a sore subject around here, but that's okay. So when we look at Peyton Manning, obviously he's not in the greatest of health. So how do you think his failing health will affect the Broncos' chances of getting back to the Super Bowl this year?
The Broncos' chances of getting to the Super Bowl, that's a great question. I think Brock Osweiler showed that in his debut he can at least make the throws necessary. But much like in baseball, when you have a pitcher who gets hot his rookie year and he goes around the division or the league and he has a bunch of strong outings, it's a little different when you have some actual tape to study. And I think Brock isn't the long-term solution for this Broncos team, despite the fact that the Bears team they just beat was pretty hot. And Brock didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't really make any serious mistakes. I think the best chance for the Broncos in the playoffs this year will be to go with Peyton Manning. I mean, I know that his last outing and the loss to the Chiefs, that he had literally a 0.00 quarterback rating. So I don't know exactly where he's going to go from that. But if nothing else, his experience and his mind, I think, is the best chance for the Broncos at the quarterback position in the playoffs. Is he going to come back next week? I don't know. I think maybe they need to see if they can keep winning with Brock. And good organizations do that. The Patriots, they have Matt Castle. They developed, and they ended up being able to, he went somewhere else and made a lot of money for himself. And I think Brock is in a good situation to do something like that. Maybe they could even trade him away for some picks or something like that, much like the Patriots actually did with Ryan Mallett. Trade him away, get some value for him, and it can be a good thing for everybody involved.
Now, which NFL team, in your opinion, is flying under the radar that nobody's talking about that may be one to keep an eye on this playoff season? And which one do you think has been the biggest disappointment so far this year?
Under the radar teams right now, I guess you could say Seattle, but I mean, hell, they were in the Super Bowl last year, so I don't know how under the radar they are. They just have been They almost fit the bill for both your questions there. But I'll go to my under the radar team being Houston in the AFC South. And the reason for that is we know Andrew Luck is hurt. We know Matt Hasselbeck, the 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck, is leading the Colts. They're 5-5. The Houston Texans, led by J.J. Watt, my quarterback's arch rival now, I guess you could say, they're 5-5 also, and I think they are in the AFC. They're the type team that I'm not going to say they could beat the Patriots, but they have a pass rush. They have we all remember Brian Cushing out of USC. He's a talented guy. They've got the guy out of the other USC. What's his name? Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt. They can apply pressure on defense, and I think their quarterback that they've got there, T.J. Yates, is capable of possibly getting hot in the playoffs. So I think my under-the-radar team is the Houston Texans, much to the situation with Andrew Luck. My disappointing team this year, I'd have to say, is I know it's due to injury, and it's still possible things will turn around, but the Dallas Cowboys. I think they had everything going in the right direction. They passed on Johnny Manziel when they should have. They drafted Zach Martin a couple years ago, the offensive guard. They've had one of the best offensive lines in the league for the past couple years. Darren McFadden's playing real well right now, but they have disappointed, and they were expected, in my opinion, to really make a run at a Super Bowl appearance, but it's not happening this year. So I got to say that the Cowboys are disappointing. Even though Tony Romo's back, I don't see them making the type of push that they need to.
Now, when we look at the NFC playoff picture and we look at the last spots in the NFC, you've got Atlanta and you've got Green Bay essentially going to fight for one of the last two playoff spots. And Atlanta they lost at home yesterday. They're sort of reeling after starting 5-0, and you look at what the Packers did to their arch rival yesterday. So I'm wondering if you could break down for me the NFC and AFC playoff picture now as you see it.
Sure. I think, the NFC picture, you got the Packers and Vikings both sitting at, 7-3. I don't see that changing. I'd see those being the two teams coming out of the NFC North that will make it. The Giants, you never know. They're 5-5. I think they'll secure their spot, and they could always be one of those under the radar teams when you have a guy like Eli Manning running the show with his down the field passing ability, his ability to stretch the field like almost no one else in the league. That's always dangerous come playoff time. The Falcons, they're a real hit or miss for me this year. I don't know. I think that they've got a lot of solid pieces, but I do see them staying in the playoff picture. So coming out of the NFC, I think right now you got to say the Giants, Packers, Falcons, and Vikings. If they were to start today, those are the teams, along with obviously the Cardinals and Panthers, who get the first round bye. I see them all holding still and keeping their playoff spots. In the AFC, I hate to say it, but I almost see the Bengals losing their bye to the Steelers. I mean, you got to keep in mind the Bengals still have to play against the Steelers head to head. Steelers are sitting at 6-4 with the healthy Ben Roethlisberger. Bengals are 8-2. I almost see the Bengals losing their first round bye in the playoffs to the Steelers, but staying with the Colts, Bills, Broncos, and Patriots in the AFC playoff picture.
And when we look at the playoff picture and postseason as a whole, what do you think are some of the headlines which will define this year's playoffs?
I think old school versus new school. You have, obviously, Tom Brady. I mean, 20 years from now, we could look back on 2015 as being just another year that Tom Brady and the Patriots won it all, right? And that would just go down in the history books. It would fit the narrative of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and their legacy so well. But if they don't win, what we're going to see a team like, look, would it be Carson Palmer and the Cardinals, or Cam Newton in the Panthers, or Andy Dalton in the Bengals, or I guess you could say that Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers, that would fit their narrative of their third Super Bowl in the Roethlisberger era. But I think the narrative is this, is we have either Tom Brady and the Patriots winning another Super Bowl, or we have someone new on the scene like Cam Newton and the Panthers. That would take the league by storm, and I think it would start somewhat of a new chapter in the NFL, which I think would be a good thing, much like the NBA is experiencing right now with Steph Curry and the Warriors. I think if you can open a new chapter, have a new superstar, I think Cam Newton, he's certainly got the physical tools, and that the Carolina organization, I think they have some serious pieces in place on defense and everything like that set to really make a run at possibly winning the Super Bowl this year and making some noise years to come.
I got two last questions for you. Just circling back to the Lions for a second, do you think the Lions would be wise to keep Matthew Stafford? And what are your thoughts on him as a player? And if the Lions do move on from him, do you think other teams will be lining up to get him?
It's a good question. You remember back in 2009 when Stafford was coming out of Georgia and we had Mark Sanchez coming out of University of Southern California. A lot of people didn't know who would go number one overall. It ended up that Stafford went number one and Sanchez went number 5. As it stands today, contrary to what the conventional wisdom or the popular belief would be, if you look at the actual numbers, Stafford just has one more regular season win than Sanchez. He's got 38. even though Sanchez hasn't been starting the last couple years. Sanchez's playoff record is 4-2. What's Stafford's? 0-2. So the numbers don't stack up that well for Stafford if you're looking at it from that perspective. Now, the emotional side of things, when you watch him play, I think it's a whole different story. I think he has the intangibles. He seems to – I mean, I remember the one – I forget exactly who it was against, but I saw one of the most amazing plays from a quarterback where Stafford just willed his way to just running the ball in and just shaking off a couple tackles. And he's a tough guy. I think he's got the arm. I think it's a matter of putting the right pieces around him personally. Now, is that going to happen? I mean, Carson Palmer, we saw it with the Bengals. If you don't have everything working, then it's not necessarily going to happen in that situation. I think if Stafford doesn't work out with the Lions, I personally think he'll end up finding a good home somewhere down the road.
And my final question for you, Kelly, is having to do with this year's Super Bowl. Who do you think will represent each conference, and who do you think will eventually win it?
I think the Panthers, we'll see a matchup that's made in heaven. Cam Newton and the Panthers against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I think we'll see Charles Johnson and that Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis and that Panthers defense get all up in Tom Brady. And I think the Panthers will be victorious. Tom Brady's proven he can make it to the Super Bowl. And he can win it a lot. But he also has proven, much like Kobe Bryant, that he can get there and he can lose. And I think that Cam Newton and the Panthers, they're the type team that can give him some trouble. They've got all the talent in the world on defense, and I think the Panthers will win the Super Bowl this year.
Kelly, we want to thank you for your time this afternoon and for talking some NFL football with us on the Two-Man Advantage podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. I'd love to join you another time soon. Thank you.